So, a while ago I made a video about the Overwatch cast and how many war crimes do they actually commit. Then I started making TikTok versions of those Overwatch videos, and eventually I started to move on to Valorant for that same series. Now, I do have a couple of these Valorant ones on this channel as YouTube shorts, but I don't really enjoy short form content that much, and the idea of making a full-on vertical video compilation of those videos and posting it here is putrid to me. So I decided I'm just going to put in the time to make an actual version. So now, I'd like to ask everyone, how many war crimes do the Valorant agents commit? But now, I would like you all to let me explain that I'm going to be judging these based off the agent abilities. So this is going to be stuff like the inherent weapons in their own kits, because technically all of them could be considered a war criminal considering that they blow up a nuke when they're attacking. But we'll just ignore that one for now, so let's get into it. Well, the poster child of Valorant is our starting point, and I mean, lads, what is there to scrutinize here? Cloudburst is just opaque wind. I can't say anything about that. Updraft and Tailwind just move Jett. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Her passive just makes her float. Like, at best, you can look at her ultimate, because we can't tell if these knives are actually legal to be used in a war, so all I can say for Jett is that she gets one war crime for the use of a non-government or military sanctioned weapon. Moving on to Reyna, Lear lands itself with just one crime, and that's kind of where things finish for her. My reasoning for Lear getting a crime is simple. As we all know, nearsight limits your vision, but for some agents it takes away your hearing. Now, I did some research on blinding and deafening, but as nearsight is a temporary blind, it's basically a flashbang, which is perfectly fine, aside from the fact that it's not government sanctioned. But deafens are where things get tricky. Weapons that deafen are classified as sonic weapons, and as of 2023, military and police forces make some limited use of sonic weapons. But some use, but still being heavily limited, means that at best we can give most nearsights a crime for a lack of government permission, and some can gain an extra crime for removing your hearing. Obviously, her powers aren't sanctioned, and Devour and Dismiss are surprisingly legal, since while yes, looting corpses is illegal, she just sucks their soul or something. There's no law saying you can't do that, so I say feck it, she's grand, leaving her with just one war crime. For Omen, the only issue I can find is his paranoia, which nearsights and deafens players, which I just talked about. Obviously this mist isn't government sanctioned and deafening enemies is very much illegal, so Omen leaves with an easy 2 war crimes and it totals out there. I mean, there's nothing else to get him for, you know? So while Yoru does play mind games, those by themselves aren't illegal, so let's go for a deeper look. There are only 2 abilities which can cause any form of harm, being Fake Out and Blindsight, which both blind enemies, and since Yoru's powers aren't sanctioned by a military or government, they are illegal, giving Yoru a grand total of 2 war crimes. Flashbangs are legal, but once again, it's not the flashbang itself we have a problem with, it's the fact that our dad up above said no. As for Sage, starting with Slow Orb and Wall, well, these are completely fine. It's just a slow area and a literal wall. There's nothing illegal about those. But Heal Orb and Resurrection are where we actually come across a couple issues. In order to heal or resurrect someone, Sage straight up steals the life force of an individual from a different dimension in order to heal them. Now, I can't remember if that individual is the same person, but we're going to say that there's every chance in the world that these other versions are complete civilians. So Sage is just outright damaging civilians, and we can't even tell how bad this damage is, because I don't know about a lot of ye, but I've never had my life force taken from me. So Sage gets 4 war crimes. 2 for the use of a non-government sanctioned weapon, because although they're not technically weapons, they are still damaging people, and 2 for the fact that we literally cannot calculate the damage that they do to someone. With Chamber, I can't lie to you, every time I cover a French character in this series, they are just so boring. Trademark does not harm you, it's just a slow zone, so it's chill. Rendezvous is just a teleport, don't even try to argue with me on that one. But as for Headhunter and Tour de Force, well, on a technicality, he is a weaponsmith. Chamber is legally allowed to make weapons, but I raise the argument that we don't know if these weapons are sanctioned by a military or a government for use in a war, which makes them illegal. But that is where it caps out for Chamber, so Chamber only gets 2 war crimes. Harbor is nearly as boring as Chamber, I can't lie to you lads. Starting off, I don't think water powers are legal in a war, except none of them actually hurt you, so I guess it's fine. However, we do need to look at Reckoning, which places a zone on the ground where geysers erupt which concuss and damage you. So starting off, the use of geysers. First off, you cannot use geysers as a weapon, but there's also the fact that geysers are usually 93 to 100 degrees Celsius, which is like 200 to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. You are literally water boiling people if you use these as weapons of war. Harbor is just water boiling his enemies. There's also the fact that they concuss people. Now, concussive weapons are perfectly fine to be used in war. However, a concussive weapon is not allowed to be used if it has the potential to damage civilians. Now, in Harbor's case, it's contained to the one zone on the battlefield, so it's fine, but for certain agents, this is not the case. So overall, Harbor commits 3 war crimes, some for unsanctioned weapon bits, and another for literally boiling your balls off. Poor Cypher can't catch a break. Man gets murdered in cinematics, then immediately put on trial for war crimes and has possibly the funniest ones. So trapwire is something that needed a lot of thinking. Obviously it's homemade, but that doesn't matter until the potential harm is counted. Since it concusses you if you stand in it long enough, does it get the weapon crime? But I have to wonder, could this affect civilians? Say Cypher just didn't pick them back up after a battle and the civilians were to return to the location, that would cause harm to them, so I decided why not? It'll be funny. So Trapwire commits a crime for that. Cybercage has no issues. Neural theft seems fine. Again, looting corpses may be illegal, but he's taken brainwaves or something, so look, it's grand. But now it's time for spy cam, and this one is just so dumb I had to include it. Posing with dead body during an armed conflict has been deemed to constitute a war crime, which means if Cypher kills someone, then takes the camera, points it at himself and the corpse, and uses it, that would be a war crime. So in total, Cypher commits 3 war crimes, but I think he gets the moral victory for having the funniest ones. And finally, the best agent in the game, Neon. Starting off, Fastlane no longer harms you like it did on release, so it's chill. Next up, Relay Bolt is where we have to pull out the concussive charges. Since Relay Bolt can deflect off walls, it's possible for it to completely miss and go hit a civilian at the opposite end of the world, so I'm saying she gets a war crime there. Highly unlikely? Yes. But also, electrical bolts tend to not be shot out from a Filipino girl's hands. High gear is literally just sprinting, don't even try to argue with me on that, and now to overdrive. Obviously, Neon's powers are another case of an illegal weapon, but when looking at the overdrive, I can't find anything anywhere that gives details on the voltage or the amps other than random voice lines. So I'm just gonna hazard a guess that like 10 million volts is not legal, and the laser with infinite range is also not legal. So Neon can earn a crime for all of that, giving her a grand total of 4 war crimes. Now, if you could all just do me a favor and refrain from calling Brimstone anything related to father, dad, daddy in the comments, I'd appreciate it immensely. So once again, we're venturing into non-sanctioned weapon territory here, and I'd say I'm sorry for how many there actually are, but I'm not realistically. Stim Beacon and Sky Smoke are completely fine since they cause no harm. Yes, Stim Beacon and other combat stims do increase fire rate, but making a war crime happen faster doesn't make it worse, so it's fine. Now, Incendiary could not be more obvious. It is in the name, it is incendiary, which causes unnecessary harm and can also cause the inflammation of wounds, making it illegal. Next up is Orbital Strike. And something you all need to know that I discovered while researching for this is that the development of orbital weaponry was largely halted after entry into force of the Outer Space Treaty and the SALT II Treaty. Brimstone's ultimate is literally illegal no matter what way you slice it. So in total, Brimstone commits 4 war crimes. So let's move on to our next healer, Skye. Starting with Trailblazer, it's another concussive weapon that's homemade. Except the thing is, it's a dog. We know that it can't harm civilians by accident, but I raise you all a different issue. This thing is a dog that bites you. So starting off, biting just is not allowed. Don't. Just don't. That's a war crime there. But then there's also the fact that we don't know what kind of way this dog is. For all we know, by biting you, this thing could be giving you a disease of any variety. It could be rabies, it could be tetanus, it could be a mystery third one that only Skye's dog has. We just don't know and we can't tell. So because of that, it's going to get a war crime there for chemical warfare. Guiding Light is another flash, which is perfectly fine, but it's not sanctioned, so it's not allowed to be used. There's also the fact that it's a bird, but we're not going to get into the use of animals in war. Seekers are the same story as Guiding Light, with both only getting 1 war crime since they don't actually do anything bad to you, they're just not allowed to be used. So overall, Skye is pretty tame with her crimes, with only committing 5 in total. Out of all the characters I've covered so far, Sova required the most thinking as to what the hell is actually going on. All drone would be fine except for that dart that it shoots. We can assume that because it shoots out and has a little bit of an electrical hiss to it, I'm going to say that it kind of tases you, and just the fact that it would probably hurt a little bit, though you don't actually take any damage in game, so we'll just leave it as an unsanctioned weapon. Next up is Shockbolt, and keeping it real with you all, most electrical induced explosions involve a lot more fire. Looking at Sova's, well, there's no fire in place, so I don't even know what the hell this actually is. So I'm gonna go with, this is a really weird laser type of thing, so Sova is gonna get a crime for that, because we cannot calculate how many volts are actually in this electrical explosion around you. Recon Bolt has no issues, but Hunter's Fury is where we have to scale things back a bit. It's described as an energy blast, which means it's a non-detectable fragment-based weapon, so surgeons cannot search for the pieces via X-ray, which makes it very, very illegal. So in total, Sova commits 5 war crimes. Take the wildest guess as to what crimes Phoenix commits. Go on, I'll wait. So going into this, magic powers are not legal in a war, and all of his magic powers light you on fire. Blaze and Hot Hands are it's just fire. It's just incendiary weaponry that causes unnecessary harm, the inflammation of wounds. It's not allowed. You cannot do that. Curveball is just another flashbang, but obviously it's not allowed to be used as a flashbang, so that's the only crime it can get. So in total, Phoenix does only get 5 war crimes, but he does win the prize for the most incendiary one. If any of you don't regret shooting Wingman, I will shoot you. Gekko has the cutest abilities in the game, but don't let that fool you as they still commit several crimes. So first off, Mosh Pit is the most platoon-ass cluster bomb I've ever seen in my life, which is insanely illegal. Cluster bombs are just not allowed. Along with that, I don't think Mosh or any of the other little blob guys are legal, so they can all earn a crime for that. Wingman is a concuss, but he isn't one that could damage civilians because he's just the best little guy. Dizzy is fine since she only briefly blinds, but Thrash is unbelievably illegal. When Thrash jumps on someone, he detains them, which removes their weapons and disables anyone from being able to fight back against you, which is incredibly illegal. Fighting someone who cannot fight back or disabling their ability to fight back is the definition of a war crime. So in total, Gekko commits 5 war crimes, but the last one is pretty severe. Now, for Deadlock, things get a bit strange. Sonic Sensor is another concuss, and I decided to treat it like Cypher. If she just leaves it there, it can be a civilian war crime, so it gets 2 in total for that, the second one being a homemade weapon crime. Gravnet and Barrier Mesh by themselves are fine, but with the comments I've seen about her kit, specifically when she released, I just had to weasel this in because I found it funny. Starvation as a tactic of battle is illegal in war. Such things as the theft of food, poisoning it, or outright stopping soldiers from being able to eat is considered a crime, which means that since Deadlock can just lock you away from your food by forcing you behind a wall with an ungodly amount of HP, I decided to be funny and say that these count towards starvation as a strategy. Finally, Annihilation is literally a hostage situation, which is just bananas illegal in warfare, and it's also homemade. So in total, Deadlock commits 5 war crimes, though the starvation one is me bending the rules heavily for my own amusement because I didn't even give it to Sage, so you can realistically say that it's 4, but sure, look, it's funnier this way. Now, as for the literal war machine, well, just hear me out. It is only stated that he was built by humans as a weapon to fight other Radianites, which means that KO himself is an illegal weapon, so feck it, his existence is a war crime. Moving to Fragment, it's a grenade that plants itself to the floor and explodes multiple times. Now this doesn't exist, so it required some thinking. What exactly is it? It couldn't be a landmine or anything of that sort, and it definitely isn't a cluster bomb since while it does explode multiple times, it isn't multiple bombs. So I decided this guy has a weapon that doesn't even exist, so it can just get an extra crime for that. Next up, Flash Drive is fine, again it's just a flashbang, and 0 Point only disables abilities, and no command is the same, meaning that while yes, their abilities are down, they can still fight back because it doesn't disable their ability to shoot a weapon. So in total, KO commits 6 war crimes. Fade is the best initiator in the game purely because of those old Bungie lineups she used to have, and I will die on this hill. So moving into it anyway, Fade actually has some really interesting crimes to look at. Starting with Prowler, we obviously have a homemade weapon, so you know the drill by now, homemade, not sanctioned, same thing, cannot be used. So they near sight and deafen you. Now deafens, as we've already discussed, are actually fine, so it's just the near sight that we're going to take an issue with. And speaking of the deafen, Prowler, Seize, and Nightfall all actually have one as well, so they can get a crime for not being intended to be used as deafen weapons, but again, deafening is somehow fine. So in total, Fade has 6 war crimes. The decay on Siege and Nightfall is actually okay because decay is just immediately given back to you, so I cannot calculate the damage that it actually does to a person, but technically it does no damage, so we'll let them off. And the first place to look with Breach is going to be homemade weapons, or just weapon. I don't really know what his arms are. So Flashpoint is fine, once again, just a flash, not allowed to be used. But as for Fault Line and Rolling Thunder, well, this is where I'm going to have to pull out my own judgment. For Fault Line, this thing has some insane range for a concussive blast, so I'm going to make the argument that this could end up concussing and damaging a civilian, so we can get a crime for that. There's also the fact that Rolling Thunder is, you know, a portable earthquake, so that's just not allowed whatsoever. So no matter what way you slice it, Breach is going to be coming out to about 7 war crimes. So I realized while editing this, I never recorded a section for Raze. But anyway, literally everything Raze uses is homemade and illegal. I mean, starting off with Boombot, this may as well be an anti-personnel moving landmine. Once it sees a person, it starts booking it towards them with the one goal of blowing up. Next, Blast Pack is just another landmine, and paint shells are literally a cluster bomb. It is a bomb that explodes into more bombs. And Showstopper. Showstopper, it's just a rocket designed to kill people. This isn't legal, Raze. The girl commits 8 war crimes. So I wonder how bad the girl with the power of stars could be. Starting off, Nova Pulse is a bit strange. It could cause damage to civilians by accident, but I'm just going to say that it can't because she can't exactly leave it in random places. So all it can get is a non-sanctioned weapon. Nebula and Cosmic Divide are fine. It's literally just smoke on a wall, so like, what can I say about that? But now, Gravity Well. This has a funny little thing attached to it. Gravity Well makes any enemies caught inside vulnerable, and vulnerable, as you all know, increases the damage that people take. So what this means is that vulnerable increases the damage that war crimes can do, which would make Astra a beneficiary in this case because of the fact that she is helping war crimes be even worse. Which means that in total, Astra commits 22 war crimes. Now, in case you're wondering how the actual maths works out for that, if Raze grenades are 2 war crimes and they are used on someone who is currently afflicted with vulnerable, then that would mean Astra would also gain those 2 war crimes because she helped those grenades do even more damage than they already should. Next up, with ISO, Contingency and Double Cut have nothing in them that can constitute a war crime, but let's talk about Kill Contract. ISO chooses an enemy and forces them into a 1v1 scenario. Now, I'm going to label this as a war crime since this duel to the death is happening on a battlefield where medics would not be able to reach either combatant, so he gets a crime there. Next is Undercut, which applies vulnerable to all enemies, and you already know the story with this. So ISO commits 23 war crimes. Similar to a certain Overwatch-based dwarf, KJ blows away all weak attempts at homemade weapons by making her weapons in the middle of battle. Heading into Nanoswarm, we have so many issues. Obviously, all her weapons are illegal. Nanoswarm itself is also very much an anti-personnel landmine, landing it with a crime. Next up, her turret is illegal, as any use of an electronic device to fire or actuate the trigger of a firearm of any kind is illegal. Next up, Lockdown detains all players caught inside, disabling their ability to fight back, which is insanely illegal if Killjoy decides to fight them, herself, or if anyone else decides to, as we've already covered. But it doesn't stop there. Alarmbot makes enemies vulnerable, meaning that the damage they take increases, which brings KJ up to 26 war crimes. And look, I only have 2 things I can say before I start with this girl, and it's quite simple. Do not, and I repeat, do not call Viper mommy, as I talk about the literal crimes against humanity that she commits. Second, take a guess at what kind she's gonna be committing. So no, first off, the nerfs that she got are not war crimes, but they certainly have the same caliber as them. So before we go in, all of her abilities are not sanctioned, so they're illegal. Next, Poison Cloud, Toxic Screen, and Viper's Pit are described as literal toxins. Now, while in game they do only decay you, feck that, this is literally chemical warfare. Finally, Snakebite is the only other example of toxins which does harm players, and it also makes them vulnerable. So seeing as she was changed to no longer be allowed to pick up her orb as well, I'm going to go ahead and say that that's something similar to Cypher traps. It could affect civilians, so we can throw it away as another crime on top. So while on her own, Viper commits 9 war crimes, once vulnerability is taken into account, she actually commits 29, the highest of the whole cast. And now we're at the end of this video with the final character, Clove. And, well, none, actually. The argument could be made that Pick Me Up is looting a corpse, but realistically it's just a glitch in the system only available to them, and they're not exactly looting the corpse, they're looting the soul, so it's fine. Their Q is perfectly fine, like it's just a decay, and as we've already established, decays are okay. But now, an argument I've heard against Clove actually having a war crime is that faking your death is illegal. And yes, that is correct, but in Clove's case, they do not fake their death. You visibly see them get shot and just revive back. So there's nothing against resurrection in a war, so I'm gonna say it's fine. So Clove, congratulations, you commit 0 war crimes. So as for the grand total of war crimes committed by the Valorant cast, it comes out to 170 in total. And I don't really have a witty outro for this, so if you're still here, I'd like to invite you to just listen to my rambling for a moment. So recently, my channel has experienced like an insane amount of growth, like just an amount that I was not expecting in a fucking million years. It's always been a bit of a dream of mine to like make videos and all that, but I thought for a very long time that the only way I'd be able to do that would be by being an editor for someone else, which I was perfectly fine with because I love editing, but you know. I've always liked to have my own creative outlet. That's why I've had this channel for so long, just as a way to make silly little videos that I would find fun to do, and of course it would help me practice my editing a bit. So I am going to try my best to keep releasing consistently good quality content as often as I possibly can for you guys so you can all enjoy it whenever you want, because you honestly deserve it. The support is amazing. And while I'm on the topic of growth, well, I want to talk about growth for a moment. A lot of my growth has come from Overwatch, the Overwatch community, the Overwatch scene, and my Overwatch videos, which, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy about. I do love Overwatch, and that's why I make so many videos on the game. I wouldn't make a video if I hated the video game, unless I thought I could be really funny in the process. Like, I'm happy that I was able to kind of unite the casual and competitive player base to watch my content and enjoy that content, but that doesn't mean I only want to make Overwatch videos. I love to play a variety of games. I like to play this game, that game, the other game. I love single player, I love multiplayer, I love RPGs, I love competitive, I love fighting games, I love MOBAs, I love FPS, like, I love to play all sorts of games, and I want to talk about all sorts of games. I love game design just as a concept, which is what a lot of my videos are, but I also just like to make people laugh. So that's what this video was. An attempt to see if I can make a video that isn't just on Overwatch, and if I could actually end up retaining the majority of my audience. I hope I can, and if you've stuck all the way to here, well, I really thank you for sticking around the entire way, whether you're a returning viewer or a completely new one. So, hoping that this does well enough, I'm going to see if I can still continue to make other types of videos. Not just Overwatch, not just Valorant, any game that I want whenever I feel like it. But for now, thanks for listening to me. If you're still here, I've got a Discord server if you'd like to join. I stream on Twitch every now and then. If you want to come see me there, you know where to go. And of course, I have a Twitter. So if you'd like to come stop by there, give me a follow, see my 3 AM thoughts, you know what to do. All the links are in the description. But for now, if you're still here, go on, drop a like, drop a sub, a comment, all that YouTube stuff, and I'll talk to you next time, lads.